Aviation is a social good. Aviation brings people together. Aviation keeps families and friends in touch across oceans and continents. It allows people to obtain skills and experience in countries far distant, which they can then put to good use in their home communities. Aviation brings huge economic benefits. Worldwide, the aviation industry directly employs more than 5.5 million people. If aviation was a country, it would rank 21st in world terms in terms of gross domestic product, generating $425 billion of GDP, which is considerably larger than some of the G20 countries. In addition, the industry supply chain and spending of people employed in it support more than 15 million jobs and more than $1 trillion of GDP worldwide. If you take account of other industries that are dependent on transport, these numbers become even larger. For example, by adding in air transport's contribution to your industry, tourism, the employment figure grows to more than 33 million jobs and $1.5 trillion of GDP. In national terms, that would make aviation the 8th largest economy in the world. According to analyst Oxford Economics, the air transport industry generates about 700,000 jobs in Latin America and the Caribbean and contributes more than $22 billion to the region's GDP. On top of these direct benefits, aviation makes an immense contribution to other economic sectors by flying business people to where they need to be, to find new markets, to see existing customers, to meet investors, to look for potential suppliers, and for many other purposes that are vital to the creation and maintenance of jobs. Air freight is a massive sector in its own right, transporting goods which represent more than 35% of international trade by value. Aviation is an industry that puts the global into globalization. The shipping lanes and ports that spurred the growth of world trade in the 19th and early 20th century have been replaced by the airways and airports of today. So aviation is a tremendously positive force in society. Yet too often it is not seen as such. Too often our industry is portrayed as harmful to society. The social and economic benefits are often ignored, while the focus is placed solely on aviation's environmental effects. Now, I'm the first to say that aviation must address its impact on climate change. It would not be acceptable for our industry to shrug its shoulders and leave carbon reduction to everybody else. Aviation must play its part, and it is doing so. At British Airways, we've taken climate change issues seriously for a long time. More than a decade ago, we became the first airline to set public carbon efficiency targets. And we have improved our carbon efficiency of our fleet by more than 30% since 1990. We were the first airline in the world to participate in carbon trading. And we have pioneered emissions-reducing operational procedures such as continuous descent approaches and microwave landing systems. And now we are going into partnership with the bioenergy group Selena to establish Europe's first sustainable jet fuel plant. The plant will convert 500,000 tons of urban domestic waste per year into 16 million gallons of green jet fuel through a process that offers life cycle greenhouse gas savings of up to 95% compared to fossil fuel-derived jet kerosene today. The volume of fuel would be more than twice the amount required to make all of our flights at London City Airport carbon neutral, and we aim to begin using this fuel in 2014. Simultaneously, with Rolls-Royce, we are planning a joint biofuel testing program. And we've just joined a project at Cranfield University which aims to develop a jet biofuel from algae. It's envisaged that the first commercial quantities of this product should be available within 3 years. I believe there is great potential for aviation to reduce carbon emissions through alternative fuels. It is already clear that new aircraft such as the Airbus A380 and particularly the Boeing 787 Dreamliner will offer significant reductions in emissions per seat. And the history of airframe and engine design suggests that the next generation of aircraft will be cleaner still. There are also obvious improvements to be made in the infrastructure of air traffic control to produce more efficient routings and reduce unnecessary flying. In Europe, we estimate that the introduction of a single European sky could cut emissions by up to 12%. At British Airways, we've set ourselves a target of cutting our net CO2 emissions by 50% by 2050 compared to 2005. And I'm delighted that the whole industry is now committed to this target, as well as shorter-term ones. So we will continue to press for progress through the International Civil Aviation Organization and the UN on a global settlement for the treatment of aviation emissions. International aviation does not fit within traditional geographic definitions. So we need a UN-approved framework to treat aviation emissions as an indivisible global total, rather than being apportioned to individual states. Global warming is, after all, a global issue. I've spent some time setting out the industry's action on the environment because it is the false premise that we are doing nothing about the issue which underpins the policymakers' arguments for imposing ever higher taxes on our industry.